Hörmətli qonaqlar, hər birinizi konfransımızda.
Dear guests, I would like again to welcome everybody in the conference, and please put your phones in a silent mode. I would like to welcome you, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome everybody in the Haydar Aliyev Center on behalf of UNEC International Masters and Doctorate Center, Pasha Holding sponsorship, Green World Solidarity Year, Sustainable Development New Year, Green Transformation and Financing Climate Change. I would like to welcome you in this conference. So, directing the future innovations in finance and climate change for a sustainable future, please welcome to our panel discussion. So, we held this conference for several years. Since 2009, we held this conference. Of course, we gathered researchers together in the economy and the management sphere, and it is the sixth International Scientific Conference of Economics and Management Researchers, and in the opening ceremony we witnessed the panel discussions, the sustainable development in Azerbaijani universities, renewable energy, etc., and we finished that panel discussions. Now we will proceed with the second panel discussion. Azerbaijan will host COP29 in 2024. So, of course, it shows that how we're sensitive to climate changes issues. So that's why, in order to discuss all these issues, directing the future innovations in financing climate change for a sustainable future panel discussion decided to be organized. Of course, we organized this conference 6 years. Every year we deliver certain messages. This year, of course, initiated by our President Ilham Aliyev based on his degree, and he announced this year as a year Solidarity Year for the Green World. Dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my gratitude to our sponsors, to state agencies who supported us to organize this sixth conference. So Pasha Holding, also British Petroleum Azerbaijan, Veysel Oğlu Company, Azersul Holding, Trendyol, Gence Wine, Azgranata, Sayton Ltd, Sunlab Laboratory, 189 Taxi Service Supporters, Minister of Economy and State Service Agency, Turkish Cooperation Coordination Agency, Digital Transformation Fund, Four Seasons Hotel, Face Mark Logics, Mark Hub Agency, Humeter Concepts Group, Sabah Hub, UNEC Lifelong Education, UNEC Sustainable Development Green Economy Center, UNEC Turkic World Economy Faculty, Municipality National Association, academical partners, Albanian Canada Technology University, US Georgia University, Georgia University, Ilia State University, India Chitkara University, Spain Malaga University, Sweden Applicable Science and Art University, Kazakhstan Turan University, Nazarbayev University, Süleyman Demirel University, Kyrgyzstan Turkic Manas University, Latvia University, Hungary Miskolc University, Budapest Technology and Economy University, Russian University, Debrecen University, Obuda University, Malta University, Uzbekistan, Tashkent State Economical University, University, Poland Academic Weir University, Silesian Academy, Romania, Danubius University, Agora University, Slovakia, Bratislava University, Slovenia, Ljubljana University, Ljubljana Business School, Turkey, Istanbul University, Istanbul University, Atatürk University, Ukrainian Taras Shevchenko, Kiev State University, Turkic Universities Unions, and European Union Refresh Education Project. And our media partners, thank you a lot, Real and ARB TV, the Education TV, Report Information Agency, Hakkın Az, APA, First News Az, Modern Az, National Milli Az, Apolitika, Baku Post, Media News, Moderator, Azadu, Marsha, Modern Az. Thank you very much. Please, with your great applause. Of course, with their support, we organize this conference, and it is broadcast in Facebook and YouTube channels of UNEC's official websites, and we would like to welcome our online listeners as well. Let's start our panel discussions. Directing the Future, Innovations in Finance and Climate Change for a Sustainable Future panel discussions starts. And I would like to introduce moderator and speakers to you. Please come to the stage. With a great applause, please. Please. We cannot wait our moderator and the speakers. Shabnam Mammadova, member of the COP29 Organizing Committee, she is our moderator. Frank Kupagud, Director of Sustainability at Eurasia Group. Günay Asgarive, Senior Manager Assurance Services, PwC. Monica Garay, Obuda University, Hungary professor. Rüstem Tahirov, Director of the Financial Stability Department at Central Bank of the Robita Bank. Central Bank. We are waiting for you, our dear speakers. If you have any questions, you have a program on your tables, and you have a QR code, and you can scan this QR code, and then you can direct your questions to our speakers and moderators around the topic they present. Please, you can do this process during the discussions, because then automatically we will get your questions in order to answer them. Now the floor is yours, Ms. Shabnam. Let's start the discussion. Thank you very much for presenting me. I would like to welcome everybody. It is a very useful phase for our country to discuss this important issue in the context of international scientific topic. It is, I feel, responsibility in this regard. I feel also a great honor. Also, I am the teacher at UNEC University, and I'm really honored to be a part of that university. So I would like to continue with discussions. I would like to present our speakers, and if I'm not mistaken, Frank Ubaidi actually will join us online. Mr. Frank, he is Director of Sustainability at Eurasia Group for many years. Actually, he participated in different projects about the sustainability issues and supported the countries. Monica Garal, Obuda University professor and dean, when it comes to the human development and sustainability issues, she has great experience. Rustem Tahirov, Director of the Financial Stability Department at Central Bank. Günay Askerova, PwC, Senior Manager Assurance, and Zaur Mehmedov, Head of the Project Management Office of the COP29 operating company. Welcome everybody. I hope that we will have an interesting discussion. I would like to give a brief introduction and then we can continue with the discussion. When it comes to the financing climate change issues, of course it's a new topic for all of us. When it comes to the climate changes, ecological issues, for many years it is discussed around the world, in our country, by political leaders, by different politicians, and we always try to find a consensus in this regard. Of course, when we make decisions in the high level, of course, obligations and responsibilities are taken, and implementation happens in different industries, in certain areas. So that's why it's very important for societies to participate in this process together. And our country, at the beginning of this year, of course, will host COP29, and we take this responsibility. After that, of course, we become even more sensitive in our society, agencies, government bodies, and businesses, also as citizens in our families. So we started to discuss it even more. Even you see lots of bicycle lanes in our city, and people discuss it a lot, etc., because we want to prepare ourselves for that event even more. And after COP28, COP29 including, and the main discussion topic is about the financing climate change. When it comes to the climate changes, all entities, they of course, especially developing countries and third-party countries, they start thinking about where they can access the financial resources, how they need to form these mechanisms. Unfortunately, top countries, of course, have not reached a serious consensus. And of course, I am the representative of this organizing committee, and we have the responsibility to work with the working groups at least to reach some part of this consensus, maybe to fulfill the certain amount of expectations. So we can consider COP29 as an event. But when it comes to United Nations and climate change issues, it's kind of a platform for us. We will host this event, but at the same time, this important topic, of course, will be discussed here by our working group. Of course, it will be seen as a result of our diplomatic activities, in November. So among 190 countries, of course, were chosen to talk about these mechanisms, etc. And our panelists, speakers, will give us more information, and then they can give us detailed information. As a country, when it comes to the financing climate change for a sustainable future, of course, when we create this consensus in the world, of course, we're actually working on proposals, and these initiatives will be made public in June. Of course, when it comes to our stance, of course, this will be the kind of achievement of our country and diplomatical achievements. What is financing climate change? How it is formed? How we need to mobilize? What are the mechanisms? In this regard, of course, in order to understand better, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Günay. Microphone. I would like to welcome everybody. Ms. Shabnam has mentioned the issue of financing climate change mechanisms and productions, but before talking about them, we need to look at all the causes and the reasons. When we talk about the climate change, it's not only an increasing temperature. It can also result in natural disasters, and it can affect the companies, the environment negatively. So when it comes to the greenhouse gas emissions, the concentration in the atmosphere level rises. When it comes to the global warming, of course, energy production accounts for the most actually percentage of all of these activities, and all these greenhouse gas emissions are emitted into the atmosphere. Of course, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrogen, even water evaporation. Not indirectly, I mean, they among the greenhouse gases, they have the biggest concentration, which holds a certain amount of gas. When it comes to the international organizations, for instance, by United Nations, 17 sustainable goals, development goals have been developed, and many countries actually joined this initiative. So when it comes to climate change, so it is goal number 13, how we can protect ourselves, and there are several targets in this regard. So when we talk about all these issues globally, of course, by companies, in order to reach these goals, different countries, separate countries need to identify their sustainable development goals, and they need to support these goals. They need to have a national strategy, national policy. All this should be integrated to their national policies, and they need to have certain demands in front of them to meet these requirements. If we look at these goals, for instance, resistance to natural disasters, etc. In this regard, we need to strengthen our activities. Of course, we need to include all these activities to our national plans, policies, initiatives. We need to improve our knowledge and skills. For instance, United Nations, they have their framework convention, and even they need to join this convention and to implement the activities. Of course, I have mentioned the framework convention. So, for instance, developed countries should support and help developing countries in terms of implementing or having these plans and implementing all these activities mentioned in the plan. So when it comes to Azerbaijan, of course, we have targets and goals. We adopted them and we reflect them, implement them in our national strategy. For the financial sector, in February of 2020, we have the roadmap for sustainable finance. It covers 2024-2026, and the main goal of this roadmap is for the sustainable financial area to develop certain potential level, to have ecosystem for financial flow. When it comes to the climate change and the risk management issues, we need to provide the integration. And from the practical point of view and the auditory point of view, of course, I can say that we have started these activities. We have internal monitoring activities, risk assessment. In the risk assessment activities, we can see that banks' representatives can take into consideration all these ESG factors, and of course they demand to have all these activities to be green, petroleum, etc. And organizations who work in the financial sector, of course, they can, if they perform all these activities and meet all these requirements, they can, of course, get some allowances. So when it comes to the type of the risks, when we talk about the climate change, we can differentiate two risks: physical risks and transition risks, we call them, and opportunities. So what are the opportunities that the companies can be benefited from them? Physical risks, what are they? For instance, is severe change of the climate. And when it comes to the infrastructure and the resources of the company, of course, they become damaged. When it comes to the transition risks, for instance, when it comes to the alternative energy resources usage, because of the new technology, new risks arise. When it comes to the world practice, I would like to give an example. When it comes to renewable resources during the energy production, also ecologically clean resources is better to use. Solar, wind, and water energy sources is important to use. When it comes to the energy provision, early weather forecast in the agricultural sector, to have more plants which are resistant to the droughts. Climate stress tests should be implemented in order to meet these goals. These are just examples. When it comes to the developed countries, when it comes to the transition risks, of course, they have more chances to implement these activities compared to the developing countries. Thank you very much, Ms. Gülnara. I know that you can talk a lot about this topic. I would like to take into consideration our time limit because we have questions from our audience. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Rustam.
So, Mr. Rustam is amongst us. So, wanted to ask you, climate, does it in any way impact the activities of the financial institutions? So, do financial institutions take into account some climate change impact, etc.? Thank you, Ms. Shabnam. I want to take the opportunity and thank the organizers for organizing this event and for inviting me. I would like to make a symbolic entrance to this topic. In the city of New York, there is a Union Square, and there is a clock there. It's called a climate clock, and we usually know that clock measures time, but this is not a regular clock. We know that UN has certain climate goals that we all are aware of, and that clock shows us how much time is left to reach those goals. And I think that this climate change, the impact of the climate change, this is very important, and it's a good thing that our country makes its useful contribution to these activities, and the fact that these large-scale activities are being conducted in country, this is also a good example of how seriously we take this issue. And of course, the climate change impacts many fields: economical, social, welfare-related, health-related issues, and there is no sphere that, pretty much no sphere that climate change doesn't make an impact on. So it happens through two channels, physical and transition risks. Physical risks are, we're talking about the flooding, rise of temperature, dryness. These are the risks that we, of course, have to live with. And in our country, climate is also sensitive to physical risks. And there is an index, a world index, and sensitivity of Azerbaijan to climate risks is measured as being number 67 amongst 182 countries in the world. So that means that our country is highly sensitive to climate change and its consequences. I also mentioned about the transition risks. This is mostly talking about the risks from the transition to the low carbon. So it covers financial institutions, credit risks, market risks, operational risks, also influence risks. So if we look at the natural events, like if there is some serious flooding, or if we look at the agriculture, the salination of the soil, it directly impacts the clientele of the banks. And these clients and the customers, their capability to repay their loans can be affected, which in its turn also affects the sustainability of the financial institutions. And currently, at the central bank level, in the financial institutions, there is this concept that climate risks are one of the risks that directly impact the stability of the finances. So that's why the central bank has also should include the climate risks in the risk management field. I mentioned that our country has a high sensitivity towards transition risks and natural and physical impacts. The World Bank has conducted a report related to climate policy, and based on that report, for our country to reach the climate goals in the next 30 years, about 40 billion US dollar investments are required, and on an annual basis it requires investment of over 1 billion per year. So these investment needs, I wanted to emphasize by mentioning them that some part of these investments are funded by the fiscal resources by state, but also important portion must be funded by private sector and banks. Financial institutes can play a role of a financial broker and help direct the resources at these fields. So that is why the financial institutions get a big load of work on their shoulders. So the activities or actions taken by central bank in this direction, we can later delve into the discussions. Now I would like to give the floor to Frank. Can we connect to him technically? Okay.
Can you hear me okay? Hello?
You good? Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's okay. Welcome to Baku, not physically, but you are with us in the panel about the climate finance.
Thank you so much, and thank you again for the invitation. So sorry I'm not able to join you all physically. I wish I was in Baku, but I'm currently in Chicago, in the US. But I'm glad that we were able to make this work.
It's okay. Maybe during the COP events we can meet and discuss issues. Okay. Now I want to take your approach about the financing of these issues, emerging countries and markets, and what are the main needs of these countries about the climate finance.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. Thank you so much, Abdem. I would say the number one thing that we all have to keep in mind is that right now, a lot of the investment that is going into climate projects is going in projects that are taking place in developed markets. And so that's the big problem that we have when you focus on emerging and developing economies. For instance, if you just take the Asia-Pacific region, we have a need of approximately 1.1 trillion of climate-related investment per year. But the current investments, they fall short by 800 billion. So that means that the region has to crowd in the type of resources that it has never been able to crowd in before. And that is the challenge that we have. And we see it in Asia-Pacific, we see it in Sub-Saharan Africa, but we also see it in many countries across Latin America. So that is the most pressing need. And the problem that we have is what the previous panelist mentioned right before me. We have a very limited fiscal space because there is public debt, particularly from the pandemic. And so that means that there is an urgent need to address these challenges by mobilizing private capital for climate financing in developing markets. So that's really the number one takeaway from me. Public finance will not be enough. We will need to crowd in private sector finance, whether it's from financial institutions, whether it's from different type of investors, and it would have to be done at a global level so that we can meet the climate needs specifically in emerging markets. Now, there are a few things that I would like to highlight. The majority of the funding for those climate projects will be directed towards the energy industry, and so that means that in most of the developing countries, there will be a need from policymakers to enable private sector investments. So I work with a lot of investors across the world, and whenever they tell me that they are willing or interested in putting a lot of their cash into projects in emerging markets, their number one concern is the regulatory environment. Will their investment be sound? Will their investment be safe? Will it be easy for them to meet the disclosure requirements that their stakeholders are asking them to meet? And so for that, you need to ensure that at the government level, in emerging markets, there is that push for transparency. There is that push for a robust regulatory framework that makes it easy for all investors to come in, to invest, and to scale up existing projects. You need to build that trust, and that trust is something that's lacking. And as was mentioned a little bit before, you can breach that trust by doing a lot of de-risking, and that de-risking is done through big international organizations like the World Bank, where I used to work before, or like the IMF. And you need all the regional multilateral development banks, and you need them to kind of like be some sort of an intermediary between the traditional investors and between the different countries and the different governments where those investments would take place. And maybe one thing that I really wanted to mention is that So, as I said before, one, you need the private sector investments. Two, you need from policymakers to have the robust legislation in place to activate and scale up those investments. But I think three, and that's something that we oftentimes overlook, we need to be as creative as possible as to how we bring in those different resources. I wanted to highlight just a few classes of bond investments. Most people are aware of the green bonds, right? So like debt security, where the proceeds are used exclusively to finance projects that have a positive environmental impact. But we can go a step further and look into the sustainability bonds, where we look at projects that are having a positive environmental impact, but also a positive social impact. And then you can take it another step further with the sustainability linked bond. And that's when you have issuers that are committed to achieving predetermined sustainability performance targets by using indicators such as greenhouse gas emissions. And so I think that once you are able to look at all of those different tools and add some new ones, like the debt for nature swaps, or like the different carbon credits, the different biodiversity credits, then you are able to have a plethora, a multitude of financial products and financial instruments that can attract different type of investors, and that could help us and help all of the developing and emerging and developing markets to meet their 2030 target by crowding in those different type of financing. Maybe one more point before I give the floor back to you, Shebnem, is blended finance. I really wanted to highlight blended finance. Blended finance is basically a solution to mitigate technological and market risks by combining public capital and private capital, along with concessional capital. And that way you are able to bridge the gap between the social finance requirements and the prevailing market conditions. And the versatility of blended finance really allows to have kind of tailor-made financing products that make it easier to crowd in investment for sustainable projects and climate projects across emerging markets. In the context of the energy transition, I think it is pretty much impossible to meet the very important needs that I mentioned earlier, right, that are in the trillion range, so not even in the billion range, but in the trillion range. It will be impossible to do that without blended finance. And if there is one point that you should all take away from my presentation today, it is that blended finance will be the key to get to where we want to go next. I was in Canada last month, and all of the big investors that I've talked to, all of the big pension funds, all of the big commercial banks, that's what they kept saying. They were like, to be able to get there, we would like to see more blended finance opportunities that will allow us to enter those markets. So I'm just going to stop here. Obviously, I could give a lot more examples, but I think where we
okay, Frank, thank you for your contribution. Very interesting, how to say, directions you highlighted in your thoughts. And now I want to give the floor to Monica. Monica, thank you for being here today with us. And human factor and human behavior and consumption literacy is very, how to say, critical topics in the topics of climate issues. And we have a presentation from Monica to understand the behavior of Generation Z to these processes. And please, yeah. Yeah, zahmet olmasa slider'ı verirsiniz.
Okay, I try. try to be as short as I can. Thank you. That's okay. Just a minute. Okay, thank you. So thank you very much at first for this honorable chance, and sorry about not speak Azerbaijani, but I need to learn your beautiful language.
You can begin from salam, it's high.
So thank you very much once more, and which I would like to share with you during this very short presentation is short research results concerning to the conception of the Z generation. And let me say some words about the main reasons to deal with this topic. Okay, thank you so much, thank you. So I think it could be a good question, how can we find the correlation between the conscious conception and the Generation Z and the sustainability questions. But you need to know that if we are thinking on conscious consumer, means that the conscious consumer behavior is essentially a decision made by consumer who planned this decision, preparing everything, all of the information which could necessary to make a proper decision. And this conception could mean value expectations, the values which could be important for the consumer can express during this consumer behavior. And these values can be correlated to the individual's interest and can also correlate it between to the social utility. And that is the point when we can find a very strong correlation between the value orientation of the consumers and the sustainability questions. And we also try to understand the Z generation concerning to the conscious conception. Because we need to know that this generation are a very sensitive one. This generation absolutely looking for the modern solutions. They are absolutely reject all of the traditional consumer model, and they are really seeking on the modern technologies, the social and the online platforms, etc. And they are really seeking on to the proper way to how they can build a sustainable world, how they can protect the world, and there are really very positive attitude towards these common issues and common challenges. So that's why we believe to deal with new generation because we believe that there are the future and there could be our potential target group in case of sustainability questions and issues. And let me say only just some words concerning to the primary research, just in a nutshell. We try to understand the new Generation Z conception concerning to the sustainability questions, concerning to the what they mean and what they think about the conscious conception. And we collect data from the generation with the help of snowball methodology sampling methods, and we use quantitative research methods during this research model, and we could collect more than 200 variable questionnaires during this primary research. And we tried to analyze two very important hypotheses. One hypothesis means that the perception of the self-consciousness on one's lifestyle and the opinions, so the attitude of the consumer about conscious living are correlated with each other. And the second hypothesis came from the value-oriented consumer behavior model, because we believe and we hypothesize that there is a very strong correlation, the individual values between their conscious living activity. And based on the results, we could say that the young people has a very positive attitude towards the conscious conception and conscious living. They think that to live consciousness means that they live healthy, they care about the environmentally and social problems and so on. And based on the correlation analysis, we also can see that the hypothesis one can be strengthened because we can correlate it between the self-consciousness and the attitude towards the conscious living style, and that's why we believe that it is a very important result. On the other hand, it was a surprise for us that we cannot validation the value-oriented consumer behavior model in that case. It means that we could not say that who think they live consciousness really overestimated all over the values, which could be very strong correlation between the sustainable questions, because you need to know that based on the consumer behavior model, based on the value system, which I mentioned you before, means that all of the consumer decision came from the individual values. And if I don't believe these values, I can make my decision only just a trend or only just to be fancy, but not driven by my inner values. And this results, I think it is one of the most important part of our research experiences concerning to this project. And we try to split the young people, key 1 and key 2, who self-reported as a conscious consumer and who self-reported not living consciousness. And it was a surprise who believed them not live consciousness overestimated all over the values which could be relevant and very strong correlation into the sustainable questions. So it was a very big dissonance. And that's why we believe that the most important conclusions or the wrap-up of the research results is to educate the young people. What does conscious conception means exactly, what kind of values they need to follow exactly, not to be trendy or fancy, but really believe that it is important for all of us, and how they can educate these young people. It is a very important question because we need to find a proper way towards them, and we also need to know that they are a very special target markets with a very special mindset and consumer behavior models and so on. So I think which is important to know first of all as a teachers or as a professors, to educate this new generation and to strengthen the inner values which can be really very correlated into the sustainable question. So really thank you very much for your kind attention, and I hope I can keep my time. Thank you.
Monica, very thanks for your presentation and your insights about the importance of inner values regarding to the issues, because I'm sitting in the organizing committee like a Smart Nation, founder of Smart Nation, and what we are working with different groups in societies, universities, laboratories, startups, private sectors, and their behavior and thoughts and consumption model of even not action and operations, even the understanding of these issues is totally different. And therefore, I totally understand the primary results and even the surprising, I'd say, results of this. What was your audience? What the people you tested?
Our students.
Students,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Thank you very much again. And indi mən Zaur bəyə söz vermək istəyirəm. Çünki biz artıq
Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Zaur, because we listened to several parties about these climate change issues. But the interesting thing is that in these topics, we wonder what is the impact of private sector and what are their expectations in this sphere? How do they see their role being in this process? Thank you, Ms. Shabnam, for giving the floor. First of all, I would like to say hello to everyone. I'm very happy to be part of these discussions. If we clarify my topic, actually, the issue that I wanted to create awareness about, it was mostly about the implementation of new technologies in the climate financing. I believe in this very much. Like Monica explained, many people in the world, they do understand and realize that climate problems are real. Governments understand it, big corporations understand it, so that is why they conduct different activities in this field. If we look at the figures, now we have the picture. For example, IPCC, based on their figures, about 3 trillion is required for the fight against climate change. So currently, all the money that are spent from all the sources equal to about 600 billion. So you can see that there is a big difference. I, of course, do believe that in order to remove this gap, there is a big role for the new technologies to play. And I wanted to emphasize several issues. If you have been watching this recent years, blockchain or AI-related technologies in the field of fintech, what kind of results they produce. In the last 5-10 years, there are fields of industries created from scratch, billions of investments in that field. Actually, the same logic can be applied to the climate financing, climate funding. Because if we look at this, the biggest problems of the climate funding could be related to transparency, be it if we look at the bonds or the carbon credits. Majority of issues are rooted in the transparency related, and they can be addressed with the help of new technologies. And I do believe that, as it was mentioned by Mr. Frank and Mr. Rustam, there are some traditional private funding tools that will be very important. But if we can address these issues with the help of new technologies as well, then if we can achieve every customer to be present in these activities, that big gap that I mentioned at the start of my speech can be removed. So if we look at the increase of the financial markets in the post-pandemic period, if we look at the money published by the central banks and the inflation, like if you will look at the American financial market, there has been an increase up to 80%. I think that it can be directed to the field of climate quite successfully. If there are specific questions later on, I will answer them, of course, but this is what I wanted to say in general. So if we further open up this issue, currently, is there a well-established technology like tendencies that are moving along at a very high pace in some countries? Yes, in some countries, there are some works in some directions. The biggest ones are done based on the grants funded by the European Union related organizations for the funding of blockchain and for the usage of AI. So there are such projects that are well in advance, and specific private projects are established based on these particular programs. Right now we have lots of marketplaces. This is such an environment, this is such a market that organization which wants to be part of this fight against climate this will provide access to that company directly to a funding resource. And usually this is very impossible without these technologies, because transparency and accountability was such a big problem that I myself reviewing a project, sitting in Azerbaijan and reviewing a project implemented in Indonesia would be nearly impossible. But with the help of this technology, it is possible. Would like to go back to you, Ms. Günay. We had discussions from several aspects, the discussion of funding tools and the mobilization in the world. But generally speaking, in the countries of the world, one of the painful issues is that asking party wants to get more than the provider is ready to provide. And the provider puts up lots of criteria that requires the evaluation, and then they allocate it. Regarding this process, are any approaches by the countries in the world? Thank you.
Yes, when it comes to the standard, unified standard, we don't have it. So in Europe, they have their own standards, legislation, sustainable ISSP board, ISRF S1 and S2 published, and S2 is about climate changes, so any framework in their base, they have the same concept. So to clarify important impacts when it comes to climate changes, we have two directions in terms of the importance. First one is the impact of the company activities to the environment, and then their impact to their company's capital, financial flow in the short and long period. After knowing all these impacts, of course, the companies can identify their interesting sites, and they identify their targets. Of course, they don't have enough resources to meet all these risks and resources. That's why they become stressful. That's why they need to assess their risks to identify the impacts. When it comes to sustainable development report, of course, there are some internal benefits, external and internal benefits. What is the position of the company to the environment, their reputation, efficient financial attractiveness, transparency of the reports, emissions indicators. There is a trend that for big companies, sometimes we know that for the standards are based on 3 scopes clarification, 1, 2, 3, and calculation of the third scope is very difficult. And sometimes companies, they do these outsourcing risks by other companies, and they say that for scope 3 emissions or 2 or 3, we have these indicators, and they hide their real emissions. Or sometimes companies can take some commitments, zero targets, or in terms of reaching certain targets, and they can also prepare the report. But in the long and short-term period, of course, the stakeholders, interested parties, observe that they cannot reach these targets, and they followed actually optimistic projects. They got the resources, but they cannot realize their goals. So that's why, in terms of transparency of information sharing, etc., it's very important to provide transparency. Of course, auditing is also being implemented in terms of the insurance report as limited and reasonable. Limited, it means that it's very limited and it has only several ESG indexes, targets, they are checked, and or reasonable assurance. It means that the report is fully checked, and it's, I think, when it comes to Azerbaijan, we have limited assurance in terms of the report's checking, and GRI Global Reporting Initiative is mostly used in Azerbaijan. It was created long before, and it covers different aspects and topics. Thank you very much, Ms. Günay. When it comes to financial tools, and especially when it comes to the climate change, these are emerging areas because there are financial tools, effective financial tools, but there are also there are some tools that we cannot we cannot do the calculation, and I think that we need new tools, new frameworks for them in order to provide sustainable development. I would like to give the similar question to Mr. Rustam. At the beginning of this year, when it comes to central bank future activities regulation strategy, it was actually announced, and our country was one of the first countries and they put on the table about the sustainable financial and presented sub-targets. So when it comes to the financing climate change, sustainable development strategy, etc. Well, because I look at the questions, that's why I wanted to give this question. So when it comes to COP29, it is about financing the climate change issues. And so Azerbaijan, of course, have different initiatives. What are they in this direction? Thank you very much. Some time ago, before I have mentioned that when it comes to the sustainable financial transition, this is our main strategical targets of our central bank, and Ms. Shebnem, Ms. Günay, they have mentioned that the central bank strategies, the components of the strategy is sustainable financial transition issue. Of course, we have two approaches. First is the risks. For instance, when it comes to the risks arise from climate changes, of course it can affect the financial resources sustainability. At the same time, climate changes and economical decarbonization is a kind of opportunity for financial institutions for new investment, for financing new fields, areas. In these two directions, financial institutions' preparations in their internal system strategies, business models, they need to be renewed. Of course, it is our priority as a central bank, and in general, I can say that all these topics have been mentioned, and in four directions in our strategy as central bank. They are grouped, and the first direction is forming potential. When it comes to sustainable financial tools, they should be broad, and we need also to have enough knowledge, skills, and expertise, reasonable, appropriate, and of course with our partners in financial institutions. In order to improve the potential, we have lots of trainings being held, and we raise awareness in this regard. And the main goal is to apply these tools by financial institutions, and we need to prepare them. And the second direction is to form the ecosystem, as I have mentioned, that sustainable financial tools, green credit, green currency, green financial, other financial tools, and in the legal, of course, framework, we need to regulate all these activities. And the financial institutions risks management system, we need to integrate climate risks to this system, and the fourth is sharing information and reporting issues. Of course, when we talk about these priorities, I would like to touch upon certain issues. To use the data and to develop the data and to use them. And Ms. Günay has mentioned certain issues in this regard. In this direction, of course, we have started activities in order to present the products. Of course, the financial institutions themselves, as a result of their activities, of course, or their customers' activities, of course, we need to calculate the greenhouse gas emissions. First level, second level, gas emissions level should be calculated, and they are classified like this, based on these levels. And of course, at this point, certain information is needed. And all these reforms should be done in a complex form, in the real sector as well, in business institutions as well. And we need to also identify information sharing requirements, demands. Based on this, financial institutions can develop products and present them. At the same time, they can calculate their future emission trajectory. Another important issue is, we call it taxonomy, sustainable tools, green tools. What are they? They are green or they are not green, I mean. We need to identify, we need to prepare the guideline, taxonomy. Of course, this is the central part of all issues we have mentioned here. Of course, central bank formed the expert group with other related agencies. With the support of our international partners, we developed this taxonomy, and our main goal is that to develop one taxonomy document agreed with other agencies, and other regulators and representatives from the financial sector can use this document. Another issue is when it comes to regulating framework initiative direction provision, it is very important. And all we know that when it comes to sustainable and green activity expenses, it is more than traditional expenses. In this regard, I have mentioned, of course, sustainable financial tools demands. If we don't have these requirements and demands, so presenting all these products will be very difficult for financial institutions. So international experience and expertise is very important, especially expertise from China. And so identified low carbon economy, there are some regulative frameworks, and it is important for businesses and individual people to have activities with low carbon emission activities. Another issue is revealing information, sharing information, and central bank has started these activities, and we have first annual report announced for sustainable financial reports. Our expectation for financial institutions is that annually, of course, based on their portfolio activities, they need to share information about sustainable indicators. They need to make them public. And currently, I have mentioned that there are some regulative guideline-related documents have been prepared by central bank, and it is communicated to the financial society. And the main goal of all these activities is to prepare the internal process of these financial institutions and to make some changes, amendments. When it comes to COP29, of course, when it comes to the issue of finance, yes, of course, we have international actors, and they think that the main topic will be financial issues in this event, because there are two problems. First of all, the first one is we have Paris Agreement for climate, based on climate risks, the heating level to keep it 1.5 Celsius compared to the industrial era. But current situation is that in this direction, the world countries kind of lag behind of all these targets. And the identified targets are that countries should make their emissions, level of emissions, should reduce the level of emissions 45% until 2030. But the level of emissions is not decreasing, but it is increasing. We witness that. When it comes to the low carbon economy transition, based on this, of course, in order to decrease the level of emissions, we need to have certain strategies. And there are some numbers been indicated. One is, for instance, annually 9 billion financial requirement. But it is only 30% of this have been kind of met. Of course, it is an ongoing concern in the world. And the main goal during the COP29 expectations are that, based on the financial climate finances, of course, to contribute in this direction by meeting all these requirements. Of course, Azerbaijan will contribute, of course, as a country who hosts this event. Of course, we have developed certain initiatives, and the main notion of these initiatives is that climate finance is not only based on the fiscal resources. We need to also attract private resources. But another problem is that when it comes to the green projects, infrastructural projects, they are not bankable. They are not, from the commercial point of view, profitability is too low. So that's why the private sector are not interested in these activities, or the risks in this case will be higher. And what is demanded from regulators? To form innovative financial mechanisms. So one of these tools, mechanisms, is blended finance, is named blended finance. So in order to finance the projects, different parts get together. First side introduced the capital, another side guarantee the implementation, or that they give their credit guarantee. Another party, they implement the expertise of the project, and all these activities can reduce the level of the risk and increase the profitability, and then private sectors will be more involved and attracted to these projects. Of course, there are several initiatives in this direction, and within the framework of COP29, it will be one of the main discussions that we will have. Thank you very much, Mr. Rustam. Of course, you identified several issues that we are all together have been interested, and you mentioned some numbers, and you talked about Azerbaijan and our activities in this regard, etc. In the last 4 months, when it comes to the climate financing, of course, Azerbaijan have also different actually stance in this negotiation phase, and our speakers have mentioned that when it comes to the climate changes, lots of investment needed in this sphere in order to make the optimization, big production companies, etc. They always require some subsidies from the government with law, and they expect some incentives. Of course, as these tendencies started from Dubai last year as a country, of course, we need to think about all these aspects which leads to climate change. Of course, maybe it can be seen as an additional investment category, but Azerbaijan's stance this year is that, for instance, if any activity should be given any investment, etc. When it comes to or we will see the impact to carbonization aspects, etc. When we apply green tools, new technologies, and the number of them, for instance, is 130, it means that the whole industry will be benefited. Of course, when we talk about the number of 130, etc., and the financial institutions, of course, or some government agencies intend some investment, then we create a new market, new technologies, new efficiency tools, etc. At the same time, investment, when it comes to number 30, we can also calculate the efficiency because then we calculate where these financial resources are going and what are the categories on the climate changes, water deficiency, etc., country-specific somehow problems. And in June, official COP office presidency will be given to us. Of course, it will impact science and technology, climate changes, and we will use this as a new tool, and we will see the application results. Frank,
Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay now?
Okay, you with us?
Yes.
Okay. I want to give you some questions about, and we have some questions from our audience that matched with my question. You mentioned about the biodiversity credits and blended financing, and audience I am asking about the criteria that developing these finance instruments, and could you elaborate a bit on this?
Yes, very good questions. Let me first start with biodiversity credits. So the biodiversity credits will basically be the same process as what we have seen with carbon credits. So as you all know, the big push around carbon credits started after the Paris Climate Agreement, COP21, in 2015. And after that, you started to see a lot of credit schemes that emerged from the voluntary carbon market. On the biodiversity side, is the same thing that is happening. In December 2022, there was COP15, so the Biodiversity COP in Montreal, and most of the countries agreed on the most ambitious biodiversity agreement to date. The goal of this agreement is to protect 30% of land and sea areas by 2030. It's called the 30 by 30 goal. The issue is that to be able to meet this goal, public resources will not be enough. You would need private sector financing. And so one of the tools that caught the attention of country delegations during those negotiations was biodiversity credits. So basically, with the issuance of biodiversity credits, just like the carbon credits, you are able, with whether it's one company or one NGOs or one social enterprise, is able to issue specific credits for instance, activities like the conservation of a specific ecosystem, the protection of a specific type of land, particularly when it comes to forestry, or the monitoring and maintenance of mangroves, and so on and so forth. I would say the main difference between carbon credits and biodiversity credits is that with carbon credits, you have one way. You know that you're focusing on 1 ton of greenhouse gas emissions, and it's harmonized everywhere. The impact of 1 ton of emission in China is the same as 1 ton of emission in Brazil. On the biodiversity side, it's a bit more complex because you're dealing with terrestrial ecosystem, marine ecosystem, soil pollution, biological disturbance. So it's very hard to find the same metric for all of them. Actually, that metric doesn't exist. So that means that for each biodiversity credits, people have their own system. That brings a lot of opportunities because that means that you can be extremely creative with biodiversity credits, and everyone can kind of like start or design the biodiversity credit project that they want. So that's the good part. But the negative part is that there will be a lack of harmonization among all of those projects. So it will be very hard to compare a biodiversity credit project in one place versus another. And so you will start seeing, as that market will develop and will grow, you will start seeing some discrepancies between the way people have monetized one biodiversity credit in one place and another biodiversity credit that would be similar in another place. So that's the tension and the difficulty when it comes to biodiversity credits. I would add on biodiversity credit that there is a huge amount of interest from leading corporations and from leading investors. Actually, in most biodiversity COPs that I attend, it pretty much tends to be very quickly the #1 topic of interest from the private sector. And it has the support and the backing of the UN. So as you all know, the UN is supporting carbon credits through Article 6, especially Article 6.2 and Article 6.4. That's on the climate and carbon side. On the biodiversity side, they are also very vocal in their support for biodiversity credits to help bridge the biodiversity finance gap. So that's for biodiversity credits. That market will grow very significantly in the years to come. Right now, we're just seeing like bits of projects here and there in Japan, in South Africa, in Denmark, even in Scotland, but it's going to grow in the years to come. On the blended finance question, so I used to work at the World Bank, and this was like a term that people have been like using and throwing around for, I would say, like now a good 10 years. The beauty with blended finance, I would say, is that you can kind of like make it work however you want, whether it's for a small scale project or a large scale project. And that is kind of like the important point here, is that you can structure your solution however you want, as long as you involve stakeholders from the private sector and stakeholders from the public sector. The goal is to make sure that you limit the risks for all parties involved by having all of them join forces. I definitely believe, and a lot of our research with Eurasia Group has shown, that blended finance could provide a blueprint for developing economies, for developing countries, to ensure that no one is left behind when it comes to the energy transition. One more thing that I would add when it comes to blended finance: the sky is the limit in terms of who can be involved there, right? So that includes commercial capital providers, that includes local communities, that includes auditors and consultants, that includes implementation agencies, and it's really by leveraging the combination of commercial borrowings, grants, subsidized loans, resources from multilateral development banks, resources from charities and philanthropy, that blended finance will allow all of us to fund projects that generate positive environmental impact and positive social impact. So most people, I would say, have struggled to really meet the promise of blended finance. There was a lot of hope and a lot of momentum around it a few years ago. I think it died down a little bit in the past few years, but I agree with what a lot of the co-panelists have said. I think that especially in the context of the next COP in Baku, there will be an opportunity to move the narrative and move the needle when it comes to blended finance. The next COP in Azerbaijan gives us a platform to push that narrative in ways that we haven't seen before, to build on what was said in Dubai, and to ensure that that conversation also carries on for COP 30 in Brazil. I'm going to stop here.
So Frank, thank you for your technical clarifications. Thank you for your contribution. I want to go back to Maria, and we have very few time for the end of the panel, and therefore I want to merge my questions to the questions of audience. And after your presentation, my next question was about the literacy, about these topics, and we have the same, most of the same question about the. Just a second. Who will develop educational campaigns for next generation, and how can ensure behavior change for more greener world? It's about the literacy issues. Okay, just for 5 minutes, please.
I try to be as short as I can. So thank you very much for the questions. And I think it is very important to know that because we're thinking and talking about the green issues, the financial questions, and how can we improve our development and how we can be much more sustainable. But I think it is very important to know that all of us are human. So if we would like to encourage our customers and consumers, or all of us, to be much more sustainable, we need to explain why. And I teach consumer behavior, and one of the most important part of the consumer behavior is the attitude. And the attitude contains three different parts: cognitive, affective, and cognitive. And if I don't understand why I need to follow this behavior, these patterns, I don't want to follow that. I will follow if I have some press on me or if it is trendy, but just for a short time. So if we are thinking of literacy, for example, financial literacy, we also need to go back to the cognitive element of the attitude. We need to educate all of the people, the new generation and the older one as well. And after that, when they really realize the benefit of these patterns, of these sustainable activities, we can encourage them and we can motivate them to do that. But I really believe at the third, I can say the zero part of the sustainable and conscious consumer behavior concerning to all of the activities with that, to educate all of our generation at first. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Zaur Melim, benim de...
Mr. Zaur, I have a question. So, the projects of blockchain and AI, are they part of adaptation or mitigation in the climate change process? So, which of them have more impact? Thank you. Shabnam. Actually, at all stages, there is an impact of technology. So this is how we should think. Say, before 1990s, life without internet, we could not think of today's life, this social network, these websites. But after the internet came to our life, now it created the opportunities that we couldn't think of before. And the same with blockchain. And there are other similar technologies, one of which is not so widely known. It's called Internet of Things, IoT. After a certain point, actually we are currently living in the world of machines, and all the devices we have in our households have direct access to internet. The technologies that we use, even the vehicles that we drive, most of them are directly connected to internet, and they live their own lives. So I wouldn't really separate it which stage it directly pertains to. So we have to look at these main problems that we are facing in the coming years, and we should try to take a phased approach to the solution of those issues. Because technologies can quite easily solve these problems, but determining the standards is something that humans will have to deal with, will have to make happen. And as it was mentioned, the issue of transparency, most of them, the standards are not there maybe because it's a new field, but I think that once all these standards are established, a majority of issues that can seem impossible now will become possible. If to speak about specific samples, for example, currently there is an air carbon exchange service, and with the help of that service, as you know, in the climate funding, one of the main currencies is carbon credit. Just briefly inform you about what it means to those who doesn't know. This is a product that if any company reduces carbon emission in their activity, it creates an opportunity for him to turn it into some profit. And so one of the best examples I can give you that of a Tesla. You know that in the previous years, Tesla, they also earned as much money from car sales as from the carbon sales. Since Tesla did not have carbon emissions, it received its carbon credits, and if it needs to end up in certain market, and if someone pollutes the environment, they get their money from that company. Regarding the blockchain, so this can be done with the credits. This is a market with about $50 million, and if world population joins this market, maybe the amount will increase to trillions. And I think both blockchain and AI can help further boost this field. So, to be honest, I wanted to start to slowly wrap up the topic. So, the majority of you probably had a chance to see the questions, and I asked all the questions, our dear panel members. So, generally speaking, COP is a political diplomacy for our country, as we have been listening, and as Monica mentioned, the shaping the behavioral models of the people. People who are part of these discussions, who are working on legislation, who are involved in technology establishment, and people, because all of these are human beings who are directly involved in these activities. And We are going to conduct, of course, this event, and I'm sure that this is going to be an important and wonderful event. And the reason why we are hosting COP29 is that all the events that we host in our country, we do it in a very diligent and clean manner, and we have a very high standard when conducting it, and the leadership of the government has expectations. We already have this topic widely popular in our country, but out at the sites, everyone, regardless of their position, lots of activities people are being enrolled in, like tree planting activities and waste cleaning. We wish, of course, there are more such activities, and of course at the end of the day everything is directly related to people. This is not just something that we need to look at artificially. Our thinking should change in that direction, and this transformation, of course, maybe doesn't happen in one day. Like we should, starting riding a bicycle and removing the big trucks from our lives, and by taking small steps we can, of course, bring it to our lives. Thank you. I think that we had interesting discussions. Thank you, and we are about to provide you with the plaques of appreciation, and I want to thank our dear speakers for being here with us. I would like to ask the cameraman, the photographer, to approach us to take a team photo, and we are about to present you with our appreciation plaques, and our dear moderator, Ms. Shabnam.
Bundan sonra bilmirəm nəsə olacaq yoxsa yox.
Mahnı